My name's Brian and welcome back to Desert Theory. Well, tonight is not gonna be shocks. We're done with them and that feels great. So what we're dealing with tonight is CVs, and CVs are everybody's, probably one of their least favorite jobs to do. They're greasy, they're sticky, but man, they're amazing. In desert racing, the buggy guys got quite a hard time for a while, being the only ones that had to deal with them. All the trucks, they had their rear ends, buggies had the transaxles, but now even the trophy trucks are going to the four-wheel drive. They're running CVs up front, so as much as people want to get away from them and don't like working with them, they're gonna be around forever. Every UTV has them front and rear, so they're here to stay. So we are using a Fodril product. It's a mixture of Bel-Ray and what, Kelly? Swepco Molly, which is basically never sees for the people that work on it. The people that make it, they may say different, but for us, it looks a lot like never sees. It sticks to everything. It just starts getting more and more places and doesn't wash off. So it's completely nasty. We use a bunch of it. It gets everywhere. But wow, does it work great on the CVs for keeping them alive during a race. So it's all worth it, but that's what we're doing tonight. We're gonna get these CVs cleaned up here. We're gonna bust these rear hubs apart to get to the CVs in there. And we're gonna take these front wheel bearings apart and do some maintenance on those. So yes, this is a full prep. I know we only raced 2 races last season, but this is what it takes to be competitive in the desert. And the bigger teams, the Luke and Dan McMillan teams, they're doing this every race at a much larger scale. So it's just what it takes to go race as fast as you can. There's that extra 10%. If you took this car out and pre-ran it, you could get so many more miles. But when you're racing, you step up that little bit more, you push the car a little bit harder, and you just have to do this maintenance in order to finish. So that's what we're doing. All right, so right now Kelly's cutting out a cardboard box. Like we said, this grease gets everywhere. So he's gonna lay that cardboard down in here. So as we clean them in the solvent tank, we have a place to transfer them because they won't be all the way clean. We don't want to get that never sees everywhere.
Yeah, those get pretty clean, but then they kind of have to dry off. And anything, if you can get it to kind of absorb some of that grease, it's just kind of a helpful thing. Then you can just throw the cardboard away. Makes it a little easier to clean up afterwards. So yeah, let's get going.
I'm working on the front brakes, pulling the hubs apart. Kelly is cleaning over here. He's got himself a chair. And it's just a lot of work. So you can see how dirty the solvent tank already is getting, but he's gone through and he's getting close to having one CV done. So it goes quick, it's fun. We can talk out here and talk about some of our race strategy, what we have to get ready for the pits, where we're gonna pit, and kind of that. So it's a good time to, you don't really have to think a lot while you're cleaning and taking this stuff apart. So the go back's a little bit different, but just the cleaning and looking and inspecting is just kind of a fun, that kind of you can turn off your brain a little bit and just work and have a good time. So now we just kind of take that caliper and we moved it around and we zip tie it up to the arm. And the reason we do that is just to not put any kinks in that brake line. So it just keeps it out of the way from what we're doing, but not damaging any of it. Okay, so now we got this outer cap loosened up and you see we get to the grease.
Cool.
Okay, so I loosened this Allen head right here, and that kind of like on the shocks. So you can see how that's able to separate, reducing the pressure around those threads. So now I can just back this off by hand. You can see the bearing behind it spinning. So that bearing is just going to kind of try and shoot out of there. We won't let it flop out and hit the ground. See how I just kind of pulled it off the back of that right there. So now I'm just going to pull this towards me a little bit and then push it back in, pull it, and that gets that bearing out. So now we'll pull this off. This rear bearing is captured, just like on a trailer or anything else, it's captured by that seal on the backside. So the bearing is right there, but it's on the inside. Okay, so this front spindle and hub assembly here are both cool. So Kelly and I talk a lot about this being Jimco 1 and Jimco 2. So on this one, you can see everything labeled here. This is labeled, they kind of did it cool here. So Jimco has their big label and it goes to number 1. And then on this, you can see Jimco number 1, and then that's scratched out, and then it goes to number 2. So I'm guessing what they did is this kind of turned into a pre-runner car for them pretty early. So at some point they decided to change the parts, the spindle and the hub out on Jimco 1, and they swapped it over and made it Jimco 2 parts because it wasn't the race car, it was a pre-runner. So Jimco 2, 5 of 04. So all these parts got put on this car in 04. So it kind of tells you how tough these spindles are, because it raced quite a bit with, it raced some with the Macmillans. It pre-ran a bunch with the Macmillans, and then it went and was raced more and won a couple points championships. So pretty cool. The parts last a long time if you take them apart and you clean everything up well. Okay, so Kelly is still cleaning away. He has he caught me?
I caught you.
He caught me. He has axles clean.
CV joints clean.
CVs looking sharp.
Yeah. Yep. So we got.
Okay, so he's caught me totally. I took the front apart, so if he needs something to do, he can still clean some of these bearings up. But we both really want to get those CV joints all on this bench
cleaned up,
all cleaned up, and just kind of make sure they all look good. So these ones, we put them up next to the transaxle because they take less
of a beating,
less abuse
less
up
shock,
there. The ones down towards the tires take more abuse. So we put our brand new CVs down towards the tires. We're really going to be able to see if we put any wear on them. We're guessing, since we raced 2 races and we really tried to take care of the transaxle because we hadn't sent it off to anybody, it hadn't been looked at in 10 years, that we're guessing that we underdrove the car by quite a bit and they're going to look great. So let's get back here. Kind of the same deal on this. If you remember, we'll have to take the caliper off, and then we'll take the bolts for the CV off, and then that hub assembly will come apart. And if you remember, in this car, to get the CV joint out farther to get more axle length, the CV is actually what the car rides on, the outer CV joint. So let's get to taking that apart. All right, Kelly was just talking. Fortin sells some double boot, and we'll kind of talk about it later maybe, but they have some tricker stuff than our old leather boots we're running, but it's not in our budget. So we have to pick and choose on some of the upgrades we do to our car that's a little bit older because of our budget being so small. So that's just the way that is, which is the same way with the rest of life. So it's really not that big of a deal, right? So Kelly has some nice coveralls on over there. And if anybody,
beauties,
maybe they're a little rough, but they are coveralls. And you can tell by my sweatshirt, this is my CV sweatshirt. But if anybody knows a good spot to find cheap coveralls, if you're 6'8" and like 260 pounds, so just like an average size,
completely normal,
average size coveralls, I would appreciate it. All right, for anyone that watched our previous CV prep night videos, when we took these things apart for the first time in 10 years after sitting in a trailer, caught cold, no real rust, but just being together for a long time, we fought getting these CVs out. We have brand new CVs, haven't been touched yet. We pulled them off the car, and now we have them on the table. And we're gonna kind of see how this comes off. So if you remember, this CV sits down into kind of a centering spot, what, probably a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and that's what that rides on. So we're gonna see how that comes off of there. Now that we've done some maintenance, they haven't been together that long. So you can see everything looks good. It's all greased, all that stayed in there. We have our bearing on the outside of the CV. That's where all the weight of the car rides is on that. This kind of centers itself down into the hub. And so we just have to knock it loose, and then we just take that bearing off. So we're gonna see how all that comes apart. We're filming, we haven't touched it yet. And Kelly's gonna see what happens.
All right, B, so.
There was no real good spots to hit it on the outside, so we kind of had to hit it
Just
here.
tapped it, right?
Yeah.
All right. What did you say we did to these things, Brian?
Oh, last time I was hitting it so hard I turned off the camera because I got a little embarrassed. So.
I remember it being, it didn't take a whole lot. It's almost like it
No, it
might,
did.
might just be. Maybe that. Move it on.
So obviously it's still a little bit of a fight.
Well, it kind of has to be. It has to be a tight fit. Otherwise, that would just move on that hub.
Oh yeah.
I'm just trying to think of a good way to get in there.
I think.
I mean, the bearing might work off of there. That thing's just coming apart though, so we're just getting brass everywhere in this bearing. I'm like kind of not a huge fan of that.
We'll just go straight to a steel punch.
Yeah, steel's gonna be okay. Moving.
So this is where you kind of hope that Doug Silcock, he gets online somehow and he tells you a better way to do it next time. So Doug, don't be afraid to help us. We appreciate it. For
So
anybody,
that's just that little tiny step. This is machined to kind of to fit that, and it just sits down there, kind of locates it, and then the bolts go through. And
so that was still much easier than last time. The only issue we had that Kelly didn't like is we were just using a brass punch that is too tired, and we didn't want to get that into our bearing. So steel punch worked great. It really didn't take that much, and I think the last two hits were even unnecessary. I think I was too busy looking at the camera and talking, and it was loose. So looks good. Bearing looks good. Obviously we have to clean it up, but
that's good.
okay, get to cleaning.
Okay, we'll get to cleaning. We're on it. I'm on it.
So I just blew apart the passenger side rear hub. Everything looked real good, but you just saw it, so we're not going to show you again because we want you to watch our channel. So that came apart real easy. We're gonna go put that on the bench and see if we can get that one apart kind of the same way. See if we are a new technique or our technique is are good enough, or if some of our friends on the internet need to help us out. So we'll kind of see how that goes here in just a second. I thought it was loose, so that bearing's really moving. There we go. The bearing's really moving around, but looks good. Obviously got to get it apart and cleaned up. Okay, so Kelly is pulling these stars apart. The star is the center part that the axle goes over, and then it's pushing on the bearings, putting on the outside of the cage. These are our brand new stars. And you can see there's a little bit of wear right here.
Well, we bought these ones before we started racing the car. So they have like, what, 500 miles on them? So 2 races, a 300 and a 500, or a 300 and a 200 mile race. And so we were just kind of inspecting this. And you can see on the loading side where the axle and tire is pushing against the axle, there's some wear.
And these are there's different qualities of stars. Did we buy the highest quality one?
Yeah, these are the Fortin CVs. So they but you know, out of the tire it takes the most hit. So it's the most shock on the CV joint. So you'd expect to see the heaviest wear out there.
So Kelly said,
I'm just kind of trying to decide if we need to flip these around or if we should run them one more season the way they are. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking flip them around.
Yeah. So Kelly said he's going to send this off, just some pictures to Fortin and just see what they say about it. Say if that's pretty normal to them, or we could be doing something wrong, or we need to flip them, or no, do them another race.
I mean, it might just be what it is with 500 horsepower and a heavy foot.
Yeah. So the only reason this is not a concern, the only reason we're talking about this though, is because we had our CVs that were smaller. And they were on our class 5 of the Ecotech, and we had about 200 horsepower, and we could race like multiple seasons on them and
have really limited wear.
Yeah.
I think it's also we were running a bus box with smaller axles. We were driving that car different than this car, I think. Although we were driving this car well within what we thought was reasonable, and
yeah,
we've driven a lot of off-road cars, and
we feel like we definitely have some more room actually to increase speed with this car. It does. We don't go through the whoops a lot faster, so we do know that we're not letting off the whoops near as much as the class 5. We're doing 50, 60 miles an hour faster.
There, we're not letting the engine rev up and come back down. No. We're smarter than that. But it's kind of trying to decide, is this normal wear and tear?
Yep.
That's like until we put some miles on the car and race it, we don't necessarily know.
But we can also see, like in Milliken, we're doing 100 miles an hour over the whoops, and we're touching the ground.
Right, you could see the tire marks. It was like every 10 or 12 feet.
Yeah, and we're not letting off at all. We're just burying our foot in it.
Your foot's buried, yeah.
So we're definitely driving this car a little harder because it has the Fortin transaxle, it has the bigger CVs, it has the bigger axles. So we're just got to figure out what the normal wear on this car is.
And it's okay. If it's normal, then we just know that that's it. That's about 500 miles, race miles. So
we'll have to flip. So we'll know we'll get 1,000 miles out of a CV
and
on the outside. And then maybe we can run it for another 500 or 600 miles.
Go on the inside. Yeah, that was exactly against the transaxle. Yeah. Okay.
So it's just all that.
But it gives you that good information when you tear it down and do this.
Exactly. So that's that gauge we're building. So say we hadn't torn this down, say that is something that Fortin says replace, and we go to another 400-mile race, and we break a star, and since it's a 2-wheel drive with stars in there, you break one, you have to replace that before you're moving again. So the CVs are... There's races won and lost in CV prep.
Yes. And there is a CV in the car. Some cars, guys, they'll have the whole axle prepped and mounted to the car. You know, something like the Baja 1000, that would be probably pretty smart. But we don't have that.
Okay, so Kelly's making a huge dent in all of the CV stuff. He's got 3 of them completely done there, and he's working on the 4th. So now my job is going to be on these hubs. So the one bearing's out, right? So that's good. But the other bearing's trapped in there by that seal on the backside of the hub. So I'll knock the seal out, both of these, get them cleaned up as much as I can with the towel, and then Kelly will get those bearings. So in this hub assembly, we have the bearing on the front side that came out. That one just falls out. And then we have this bearing on the back side. You can see it right here. that's what we're going to take out right now. So I'm just going to get a little bit longer pry bar. Fight me a little bit. Get a little more leverage. Thought it would go easier.
There he goes.
Oh, look at that. Man, I'm a good sweatshirt. Never mind, it's not a good sweatshirt.
Yeah, she's seen better days.
I do need those oversized coveralls though. Need to work on getting some of those. So that's all that is, dust seal. So it's just going in there, kind of captures that bearing, keeps the dust out and the grease in. Okay, so just the other side, just kind of do it the same way. Okay. That one came out easier for whatever reason. Still made a good seal. There's no dirt down in there, but looks good. Just a filthy night. Filthy night out at the shop. Okay, so the last little bit here, it got so greasy that there was no reason to time lapse just cleaning the bearings. So we turned on the air compressor and we blew out some of these bearings after Kelly cleaned them. Just getting everything drying here, but they all look really good. So, liking the way everything looks, letting it dry all the way. We're gonna make sure we have enough grease here in a bit, but that's about it. We had a great night of getting done what we hoped to get done, and that was to get everything torn apart, everything cleaned up, and everything ready for reassembly. So, man, at this point, we kind of said it last video maybe, and it didn't end up to be true. But now we are getting very close to reassembly. So I think front hubs will go together next time. Some shocks can go on some things.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say rear hubs. You put rear hubs together, front hubs together, front shock. You can button the front end.
Yeah, front end will be buttoned up. Hopefully Kevin McMullen gives us the word on that transaxle getting done and that it's shipped pretty soon. That'll feel good, but we're still not getting held up by it. So Kelly and I are excited.
Oh,
He's using the old rear suspension box over here.
I'm looking for parts here.
What he's looking for is probably seals for the rear hubs.
Let's just see what's in here.
Okay, so it's 12:30. Kelly's got to work tomorrow. It's time to wrap things up out here. But talk about a successful night. All the hubs pulled apart. All the CVs pulled apart. Everything cleaned. Everything drying.
Bearings look good.
The bearings do look good. Super excited. Everything. It's just nice. We kind of talked about it off camera. It's just nice knowing that all your parts are good. You're not trying to call up, get something on the way. You're just going to be greasing and then getting it here. So, great night. Kelly's looking at some numbers on this so we can order them from Dan.
Yep.
So I decided to definitely smash it right where the numbers were to make it a little bit harder.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, this is night whatever of the prep. I'm really happy we didn't have shocks for you and showed you something else. So, thanks for sticking around with us. Thanks for watching us. 6 more weeks is probably, I should say, 5 more weeks. And then we're gonna have this thing out in the desert, testing it real quick. And then the 6th week, we're gonna be racing. So we're getting close. Thanks for watching.